Het is, als jullie het kijken, maandag 13 september. En ik heb vandaag weer een internationale gast, dus de rest van de uitzending zal in het Engels zijn. Welcome, Sorin.
Good evening, Willem.
It is great to have you back. You are our fixed panel for and medical subjects and the state of Israel. But today we will talk about something connected to medical sciences, of course, but also to humanity. And we will take a few steps. We will take it a few steps further. We will talk about transhumanism. And of course, there is a connection with Israel in that sense as well. Yuval Harari, a philosopher or thinker, intellectual, one of the leading ones, has given, I think, actually at the World Economic Forum, a presentation about hacking humans, transhumanism. So please tell us a bit about your thinking about this clip and how it got you to think about transhumanism.
Well, I would like to go tell something about myself. I'm a physician. I've been working in an international environment. I have experience in different fields, and also in economics. And I thought of myself as a very educated guy, only to discover that actually I was quite ignorant, because all of this is worthless unless you have some spirit of humanity inside. And I'm not saying that I wasn't human, but I was compassionate, I was everything, but it is something we should remember. Being humans, don't go to machines. Medical science that started with what's called semiology, and when you were actually talking to a person, you were discussing with him, you were examining him on all planes. That means spiritual, psychological, and also physical. Nowadays, we hardly talk to people. We send them to a set of tests, which is ultrasound, whether it's CT or MRI or you name it. And everything is the machine. And whatever the printout of the machine is, this is the diagnosis. While you have to understand, you have to make the right connection in between the findings, the results, and the clinical context of the person.
So that you are actually saying that in medical sciences, the authority or the autonomy shifted from the physician more to machine-based or computer-based decision-making.
Definitely, because many times you would see there are also other aspects like medical legal aspects, and we've seen not once, not twice, and actually many times individuals that were sent for a workup to try to establish the right diagnosis, and all of a sudden they got a finding which nobody really knows, and the finding triggered another set of investigation, some of it even intrusion by biopsy and invasive, only to result in complications. And it was eventually something insignificant, but the mindset of the medical science have changed from the clinical science and situation of the person to the finding based on the machines and the medical legal aspect of not being sued, having ourselves covered up in terms of results. And this, unfortunately, is on the expenses of the patient.
Okay, so before we get more into detail of the clip, let's watch it first, and then we get back to it.
So I want to talk to you today about the future of our species, and really the future of life. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. Within a century or two, Earth will be dominated by entities that are more different from us than we are different from Neanderthals or from chimpanzees. Because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. These will be the main products of the economy, of the 21st century economy. Not textiles and vehicles and weapons, but bodies and brains and minds. Now, how exactly will the future masters of the planet look like? This will be decided by the people who own the data. Those who control the data control the future not just of humanity, but the future of life itself. Because today, data is the most important asset in the world. In ancient times, land was the most important asset. And if too much land became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into aristocrats and commoners. Then in the modern age, in the last 2 centuries, machinery replaced land as the most important asset. And if too many of the machines became concentrated in too few hands, humanity split into classes, into capitalists and proletariats. Now data is replacing machinery as the most important asset. And if too much of the data becomes concentrated in too few hands, humanity will split not into classes, it will split into species, into different species. Now, why is data so important? It's important because we've reached the point when we can hack not just computers, we can hack human beings and other organisms. There is a lot of talk these days about hacking computers and email accounts and bank accounts and mobile phones, but actually we are gaining the ability to hack human beings. Now, what do you need in order to hack a human being? You need 2 things. You need a lot of computing power, and you need a lot of data, especially biometric data. Not data about what I buy or where I go, but data about what is happening inside my body and inside my brain. Until today, nobody had the necessary computing power and the necessary data to hack humanity. Even if the Soviet KGB or the Spanish Inquisition followed you around everywhere, 24 hours a day, watching everything you do, listening to everything you say, still, they didn't have the computing power and the biological knowledge necessary to make sense of what was happening inside your body and brain, and to understand how you feel and what you think and what you want. But this is now changing because of 2 simultaneous revolutions. On the one hand, advances in computer science, and especially the rise of machine learning and AI, are giving us the necessary computing power. And at the same time, advances in biology, and especially in brain science, are giving us the necessary understanding, biological understanding. You can really summarize 150 years of biological research since Charles Darwin in 3 words. Organisms are algorithms. This is the big insight of the modern life sciences, that organisms, whether viruses or bananas or humans, they are really just biochemical algorithms. And we are learning how to decipher, these algorithms. Now, when the two revolutions merge, when the infotech revolution merges with the biotech revolution, what you get is the ability to hack human beings. And maybe the most important invention for the merger of infotech and biotech is the biometric sensor that translates biochemical processes in the body and the brain into electronic signals that a computer can store and analyze. And once you have enough such biometric information and enough computing power, you can create algorithms that know me better than I know myself. And humans really don't know themselves very well. This is why algorithms have a real chance of getting to know ourselves better. We don't really know ourselves. To give an example, when I was 21, I finally realized that I was gay after living for several years in denial. And this is not exceptional. A lot of gay men live in denial for many years. They don't know something very important about themselves. Now imagine the situation in 10 or 20 years when an algorithm can tell any teenager exactly where he or she is on the gay-straight spectrum, and even how malleable this position is. The algorithm tracks your eye movements, your blood pressure, your brain activity, and tells you who you are. Now, maybe you personally wouldn't like to make use of such an algorithm, but maybe you find yourself in some boring birthday party of somebody from your class at school, and one of your friends has this wonderful idea that I've just heard about this cool new algorithm that tells you your sexual orientation, and wouldn't it be a lot of fun if everybody just takes turns testing themselves on this algorithm as everybody else is watching and commenting? What would you do? Would you just walk away? And even if you walk away, and even if you keep hiding from your classmates or from yourself, you will not be able to hide from Amazon and Alibaba and the secret police. As you surf the internet, as you watch videos or check your social feed, the algorithms will be monitoring your eye movements, your blood pressure, your brain activity, and they will know. They could tell Coca-Cola that if you want to sell this person some fuzzy, sugary drink, don't use the advertisement with the shirtless girl. Use the advertisement with the shirtless guy. You wouldn't even know that this was happening, but they will know, and this information will be worth billions. Once we have algorithms that can understand me better than I understand myself, they could predict my desires, manipulate my emotions, and even take decisions on my behalf. And if we are not careful, the outcome might be the rise of digital dictatorships. In the 20th century, democracy generally outperformed dictatorship because democracy was better at processing data and making decisions. We are used to thinking about democracy and dictatorship in ethical or political terms, but actually, these are two different methods to process information. Democracy processes information in a distributed way. It distributes the information and the power to make decisions between many institutions and individuals. Dictatorship, on the other hand, concentrates all the information and power in one place. Now, given the technological conditions of the 20th century, distributed data processing worked better than centralized data processing, which is one of the main reasons why democracy outperformed dictatorship and why, for example, the US economy outperformed the Soviet economy. But this is true only under the unique technological conditions of the 20th century. In the 21st century, new technological revolutions, especially AI and machine learning, might swing the pendulum in the opposite direction. They might make centralized data processing far more efficient than distributed data processing. And if democracy cannot adapt to these new conditions, then humans will come to live under the rule of digital dictatorships. And already at present, we are seeing the formation of more and more sophisticated surveillance regimes throughout the world, not just by authoritarian regimes, but also by democratic governments. The US, for example, is building a global surveillance system, while my home country of Israel is trying to build a total surveillance regime in the West Bank. But control of data might enable human elites to do something even more radical than just build digital dictatorships. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it. And if indeed we succeed in hacking and engineering life, this will be not just the greatest revolution in the history of humanity. This will be the greatest revolution in biology since the very beginning of life 4 billion years ago. For 4 billion years, nothing fundamental changed in the basic rules of the game of life. All of life, for 4 billion years, dinosaurs, amoebas, tomatoes, humans, all of life was subject to the laws of natural selection and to the laws of organic biochemistry. But this is now about to change. Science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds, the IBM cloud, the Microsoft cloud. These are the new driving forces of evolution. And at the same time, science may enable life, after being confined for 4 billion years to the limited realm of organic compounds, science may enable life to break out into the inorganic realm. So after 4 billion years of organic life shaped by natural selection, we are entering the era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design. This is why the ownership of data is so important. If we don't regulate it, a tiny elite may come to control not just the future of human societies, but the shape of life forms in the future. So how to regulate the data, the ownership of data? We have had 10,000 years of experience regulating the ownership of land. We have had a few centuries of experience regulating the ownership of industrial machinery. But we don't have much experience in regulating the ownership of data, which is inherently far more difficult because unlike land and unlike machinery, data is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It can move at the speed of light, and you can create as many copies of it as you want. So does the data about my DNA, my brain, my body, my life, does it belong to me or to some corporation or to the government or perhaps to the human collective? At present, big corporations are holding much of the data, and people are becoming worried about it. But mandating governments to nationalize the data may curb the power of the big corporations only in order to give rise to digital dictatorships. And politicians really, many politicians at least, are like musicians. And the instrument they play on is the human emotional and biochemical system. A politician gives a speech and there is a wave of fear all over the country. A politician tweets and there is an explosion of anger and hatred. Now, I don't think we should give these musicians more sophisticated instruments to play on. And I certainly don't think they are ready to be entrusted with the future of life in the universe. Especially as many politicians and governments seem incapable of producing meaningful visions for the future. And instead, what they sell the public are nostalgic fantasies about going back to the past. And as a historian, I can tell you two things about the past. First of all, it wasn't fun. You wouldn't like to really go back there. And secondly, it's not coming back. So nostalgic fantasies really are not a solution. So who should own the data? I frankly don't know. I think the discussion has just begun. Most people, when they hear the talk about regulating data, they think about privacy, about shopping, about companies, corporations that know where I go and what I buy. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are much more important things at stake. So the discussion has hardly begun, and we cannot expect instant answers. We had better call upon our scientists, our philosophers, our lawyers, and even our poets, or especially our poets, to turn their attention to this big question. How do you regulate the ownership of data? The future, not just of humanity, but the future of life itself may depend on the answer to this question. Thank you.
אם אהבתם את הסרטון הזה, אתם מוזמנים להצטרף אלינו באתר Nowhere, מקום לדעת, בו אנו משתפים איתכם את הסרטונים שיוטיוב, פייסבוק וטוויטר מנסים לצנזר. הצטרפו אלינו בטלגרם ותמכו בנו בפטריון, כדי שנוכל להמשיך ולחזק את הערוץ ולשתף את האמת על הבריאות והעתיד של כולנו.
Okay, I hope people have seen the clip. There's a few aspects we would like to cover. Let's start at the beginning. What do you think of the whole notion of the hackable human?
I find it repulsive. I find it repulsive and dehumanizing. And also the essential postulate that he mentions about first owning the lands and then owning the machines and then owning the data is a wrong postulate. It is absolutely a wrong postulate, because the land was feeding and will continue to feed even if we have machines, even if we have computers. And even if we have data, we will still be needed to feed.
I don't think he meant that the other things are not significant, but the way I understood it is that power resides with those who control the land first, and then the machinery or the technology, and now the people who control the data control the world.
Right. But you see, this is the problem. This is the problem with the concept, and this is what's leading towards what's called transhumanism. First, you have to have the humanism. You have to have the spirit. And I'll have to tell you something. I was a secular guy for almost 4 decades. I was firstly fighting all religious beliefs, And until maybe you remember this Beatles song of the Beatles, "Let It Be." Then I had my Mother Mary came to me and said, "Let it be," and I said, "Let it be." So I changed my concept, my orientation, as I changed my concept a year and a half ago in regards with the whole issue of the vaccination and the medical science. But I was trying to say, hey, we need the spirit that makes us human, the thing that differentiates us from the animals and makes us human. You cannot go to transhumanism, because otherwise we will cease to exist. We will absolutely cease to exist.
Well, and then we get to the discussion that this is engineered, not only hackable humans, but engineering humans, engineering life, and that it will be a break in what normally constitutes as evolution, that now we rapidly excel. And what he foresees is that we will create speciation, or that we create different species from human beings, whether that is like cyborgs connected with non-biological tissue, or whether that is really changing the DNA and creating different organisms. Then we get, of course, into the discussion we actually already had around the year 2000. Then we had the Human Genome Project that was finished. People saw the potential of what it could do, and that created a whole discussion, a medical, ethical, legal discussion, whether when something is possible, whether we should use it and how we should use it. And it feels a bit like now we are 20 years further down the road. The industry has seen the potential to make money out of it, and they want to rerun that discussion.
Yes, but the whole thing is not an evolution at all. On the contrary, this is involution, because when you talk about evolution, you are talking about the evolution of a species, which means improvement. Every time you have an improved version of the same species. In this case, we are not talking about evolution, we are talking about involution, which actually means extinction. This is an extinction of the human species as we know it, instead of creating and improving a human species. This is no evolution, sorry. And you said something about the power of these people. Let's think about this. They consider themselves powerful. But why are they powerful? Because of their money? Because of their ability to manipulate and move forced arms, like police, like army? They themselves, they have no power. They use other people's power, and they consider themselves powerful. And this is a fiction. This is a illusion we have, that they are powerful. Amongst us, there are so many people empowered and gifted by the nature, by the God, by the spirit. And they are not recruiting people by force. They are recruiting people by will. So I hope you and the viewers will understand the difference between powerful and empowered. Empowered is something that would be positive. It is, one could say it's God will. But powerful, it is most of the times a negative connotation. And this and transhumanism and hacking doesn't bring us to no evolution. This brings to involution. this is, somebody said once as a philosophical, humans are the worst species. They will destroy themselves, unlike all other species.
Well, there are species that also form pests and then they die out because they eat all the resources. So I think there is not specifically something different between humans and other species. Species try to reprocreate and try to adapt to their surrounding. And I think there is the great difference. If we start to steer the surrounding as well as the species, then it becomes a very unstable system. And I think that hubris of thinking that we can control our minds, our emotions, our evolution, our surrounding, that inevitably always leads to what you, I think, clearly see is some sort of disaster or extinction. These megalomaniac ideas actually bring back memories of the eugenics program that the Nazis also were very fond of. And of course, that is a sensitive subject, but this trying to improve on humanity is a theme that keeps coming back in history.
Yes, but improve humanity, you can do it in so many ways. You don't have to hack, and don't have to transform a person, an individual, into something that he isn't, and he wasn't meant to be from the very beginning. You can improve his environment. There is also a natural selection and a natural evolution, and as you said, adaptation to the new conditions. But you don't have to prove. You know, there is the CERN institute in Geneva, where they have this accelerator, nuclear accelerator, and trying to hunt the boson, which physicists call him the God particle. The DNA is the God sequence. It's not only a particle, it's God sequence. It's something what was instilled in us from the very beginning. Life is so mysterious. We have all these extremophiles that live on temperature of minus 60, 70, and they prosper, and also plus 70, 80, and more. And this is the wonder, this is the miracle of the life. You don't interfere with God sequence. And moreover, you don't interfere with something you don't really understand. All the mapping, everything that was done, I'm not sure they went all the way into the bottom and to understand what it is going on.
Well, I'm pretty sure they haven't, because this has never been done before. So even when they think they understand it, what always is shown afterwards, that it was much more complex, and their idea of improving was a shifting puzzle, trying to solve one part and then pushing out another part. So I don't believe that it really will lead to a direct improvement, but I think it's much more fundamental of what we want as a human being, as a society. And you also mentioned something, and this is also mentioned in the clip. Machines, computers, artificial intelligence, these are tools to make us excel, to make us reach our goals. But now it starts to be the other way around. Now we have to adapt because we are not good enough to fit our tools. And that in engineering is nonsense normally.
Of course, it's nonsense. You have a tool, and let's go to the definition of a tool. It's something that helps you achieve and create something. This is not something that should replace you completely. It is like the golem that it raised on his master. This is what we are going to face. Only this time, the golem will be many of us, and eventually the master will be the system, and it will destroy. I never thought to go this way, but I think it was this Schwarzenegger series of movies of the war between human and machines. It is somehow prophetic. If you create an artificial intelligence that eventually will start working as algorithms, and when they become artificial intelligence, they will absolutely break Asimov rules of robotics. Then we are doomed. We are doomed. The machine will create tools to destroy us. And I think they fail to understand this.
There's a lot of science fiction that is kind of prophetic. Also, The Matrix is an example of those, and there's many more examples of showing the possibilities, but also the dangers of relinquishing our autonomy, our responsibility to AI, to computer systems. It is a very interesting subject, and I think this really goes to the heart of the meaning of life. And for me, I'm not religious, but I feel that every person needs to spend a lot of time with himself and has to overcome obstacles in life to experience who he or she is and what his or her purpose is. And without that, it doesn't really make any sense to improve, because you don't know what you are.
Exactly. And let me tell you why we have gotten to this stage. We have gotten to this stage because we have neglected our humanity. We have neglected the spirit. And we have created false idols, false gods, money. We have created the computers. We have created all the digital media. And we created a so-called comfort zone. But this comfort zone is our disability zone. We have become crippled because we have lost human figure. We have lost faith. I don't believe in religion. I believe in faith, being faithful and believing in a spirit, a God, or on Jesus for that matter. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to belong to affiliate yourself to a church like this, or a synagogue, or a mosque, or whatever. You only have to have faith, because we are humans and God has put in us this God sequence. And we have gone astray. We are lost souls. We should contemplate within ourselves what is really important, because you see what we have gone through in the last, and especially in the last 2 or 3 decades, is an indoctrination and creating a bunch of idiots. You have all these programs that are of no content really, and it reminds me the old Rome. They would say, give the people bread and circus. Give them pane et circus. This is only to keep them stupid, to keep them busy and satisfied. We are just, as we are now, we are just envelope. We have no core. We have no core. And those criminals are attending to remove and to change the little remaining of what we have human. We should keep this core, this seed of humanity. This is what I think.
Yeah. Now you're talking about criminals. Let's specify that. What Yuval Harari mentioned, that the merger of the infotech industry and the biotech industry has created this opportunity. Now, what we see with companies is that these are like machines. They only have one purpose, is to grow, to agglomerate money and influence. So if you leave it up to that industry, there's only one outcome. We will hack and then reverse engineer, create cyborgs, and eventually probably phase out any biological part because it is a nuisance to AI networks.
Precisely.
And we're looking at what is happening at it in front of our eyes, and what this corona pandemic or crisis brings to bear is that we are letting ourselves be fooled. What you see with the healthcare workers is a great example. Last year, we were cheering them on and applauding for them. And this year they're fired. They don't get a raise and they're fired if they don't do the job. And this is what will happen to all of us. And I think that is such a fundamental part to this crisis, that we all become lethargic or apathic to what is actually happening.
We have been put to sleep while awake. Nothing less than that. And people don't understand that this is only the prodrome of what's coming. This is only to test how much are we going to surrender our humanity. And I'm not talking about the human rights, because you can be a slave, but we surrender. This is a sign, this is symbolic, that when you allow somebody to perform an invasive procedure like vaccination, experimental vaccination on such global scale, this is surrendering your body, surrendering your everything. You have nothing left. This is only the test. Next, there will be the rest of it, and the chips we are going to see in the next clip. So this is only the beginning. We should raise up and fight this while we can. Because if you see, just a second, if you see about, you just mentioned mergers. For a decade, I have the MBA degree, I had some analytic, I read some analytic articles. There is an increasing creating of corporates, and many of them become part of the multinational corporates, and they have begun to be like a beast. It is absolutely controlling. They have much more financial power than governments. Okay, now I just read, and there was an article I came across, I can find it, I think. They had some analysis, and during this creation, there are some 3 investment groups. One is Vanguard, BlackRock, and another one, Street something. All of them are a cover-up of very few families. Very few families. So you can say that about between a dozen and 20 families in the world, they control its most economy. So this is the beast we have created. Facing this kind of enemy, you cannot put any regulation. There is no regulation that in Harari lecture he mentioned about the control of the data, the regulating the data. They are the guardians. They are the regulators. They are the operator of the data. They are everything. So the question is, who's watching the watchers? Who's watching the guardians? And the answer is no one.
Yeah, and this probably is a much longer story, or goes much further back. If we look at our democracy, how honest is it? How real is democracy? How real is our open society? Of course, we've been manipulated many times before, but it comes to a level where it really endangers our humanity. But I wanna go through a few examples. For instance, if somebody has a tetraplegic injury that you could fix with robotics or bioengineering, would you do it?
Again, this is something that is similar to our present interventions in medical field. We have dislocated hips, and we have problems with the hips and the articulations, and we change it, but we don't control and we don't hack. You have to see this in the wide context. It is fine to help somebody regain his function. This is done in order to maintain his human dignity. This is humanism, not transhumanism.
Okay, then we go one step further. Plastic surgery, that's also called enhancement or augmentation. Is that ethical? It's not making a symbiont yet, but I'm trying to give you examples of where the line is and by which it is defined.
Can you specify what you mean by plastic surgery?
A boob job or lips, thicker lips.
Listen, I can only think of a TV show, which is on one of the channels I don't really respect, but this specific series I do appreciate, because we are talking about Dovro and Dr. Dovro and
it's called Nip Tuck.
Yes. So they are attending plastic surgeries in an ethical way, and somehow I have to do with this industry also. But I would never go for crazy things. I would never, for instance, create lips, or like I call the Instagram lips. I would never do this. Thank you very much. I give up your fees. I don't go there. It is all within a code of ethics, a code of professional ethics. And unfortunately, lately, this word ethics has become somehow meaningless.
I agree. Now, if we take that example, if you go to extremes with the augmentation, there is still such a thing as self-determination. But can such a person self-determine? And I think there is what you say on one side is the medical ethics, first do no harm, but what is harm, psychologically speaking? And can such a person who wants to become a freak, let's take it in the extreme, self-determine, because the core of that person is probably not very stable.
You just asked and answered. If he's not stable, don't fix his face, don't fix his nose, don't change his ears, don't implant all kinds of weird things. Treat the reason. If he's unstable, treat him inside here. Treat his spirit, treat his soul, because everything is only a sign of, it's a symptom of an other underlying disease. His problem is not the cheekbones. His problem is self-imaging, how he conceives himself, how he sees himself. treat that problem, address that problem, not the symptom.
And then we get to self-love and self-confidence, which are at the core of self-determination. So this whole focusing on whether when the technology enables us, we should do it, we should take it one step back and really go back to what defines us as a human. Another thing that Yuval mentioned is because he's outspokenly gay, and he gives an example of wouldn't it be fun if the algorithm can read it, and then you're at a boring party and you could find out of other people who are it as well. And I find it a nice example because one of the most famous scientists in Holland, Dick Swaap, not Klaus Schwab, but Dick Swaap, who is a doctor and has written a lot about the brain, actually explains what happens between the 4th and the 11th week of the pregnancy, that there is a discrepancy in the hormones, and that determines your primary sexual organs and your brain's sexual orientation. Should this be fixed by engineering, or is this core of humanity? Is this the core of who you are?
Interesting question. Lucky for me, I have the answer. I think, and this will not go with any religion, but I think we should, as I keep to the rule, don't mess with God sequence. If this happened, this must have happened for some reason. And let the guy be himself. Keep respect for this person as long as he respects, the respect is mutual. And his purpose on this planet, or amongst us as a human society, is to mark the limits. Because think of yourself, one may think of himself normal. The question, the philosophical question is always, what's normal? Normal referred to what, as opposed to what? So we need all these extremes to bring us into the middle of the road. Otherwise, you go to the shoulders and you might turn upside down. But keep those edges as edges. Don't transform them as the mainstream. Let them be what they are. Let them be a part of us. Let us embrace everything, but don't have to change. And if you must remember that the Gauss distribution in statistics, that it has all the extremes. Most of the people are within normal distribution, whether it's 1 standard deviation or 2 standard deviation. Most of them are in the middle. And we need these extremes to define us. We have our definition as a reflection of these extremes.
Yes, so humanity is based on a spectrum. And this brings us probably in itself, in the same bracket as self-determination and self-love, is acceptance. First self-acceptance and then acceptance of the other. Because what transhumanism actually has as a profound message is, you as a human are not good enough.
I think it's worse than that. You are not human. You are just a commodity. And you should be transformed the same way your raw materials are. Only this kind of raw material happens to be biological.
That brings us to another part of the video. He also mentions the example of the extreme control and surveillance state that is rolled out in Israel at the West Bank, which could be almost seen as a beta test. Do you think that is a good example? And do you also see that as the grave danger if we relinquish our self-determination to the system, whether it's a political system or a system run by algorithms?
Let me tell you that this footage, that the clip we just saw, is from 2018. Today we have another system deployed by the police. It's called the Hawkeye, which is a network of cameras placed in the roads, and they actually monitor your movements while you're driving, and it is all stored in databases. So it's not only in the West Bank, it is all over. And I can tell you, I studied in Romania in the time of Ceausescu, the communist regime. I found microphones. Okay, so this is another type of surveillance. This is not new, but the kind of surveillance he was referring to is something to do with economical aspects. You know, that, as I said, that this information worth milliards, billions for the companies. But this is another type. This is monitoring vital functions. So in any given time in the future, or what's called a machine evolution while human involution, they will control the heartbeat. They will control the blood pressure. And just pushing the button, one could be dead. Okay, so this is the destructive part. You know, in technology, I learned there is something that is called cannibalism. When you have a new technology that cannibalizes the old technology. For instance, you had the first generation of mobile phones, then you have the second, then you have the third. Every passage from this, from generation to generation, it was cannibalizing the previous. In this case, the technology cannibalizes us. Instead of us using the technology as a tool, the technology will use us as tools.
Yes, that is completely logic, but a very gloomy future. Now let's look at the second clip.
Is the first chip implanted into the human brain that directly links the human brain with the hard drive of a physical computer without a wire, without a cable. We have the biology that allows us to do already, we have this, what those chips are allowing us to do. When we learn to access these mirror neurons in a very specific way, we have super learning. I do this personally. I mean, we can learn very, very quickly. We are at this pivotal crossroad where we are developing and evolving our technology so quickly. We have to make a choice as a society. How much of our power will we give away to the machines? How much of it sounds like a science fiction movie? Where do those movies come from? This is consciousness in those movies asking us to explore how much of ourselves do we want to give away. And here's a perfect example, Elon Musk. Elon Musk has developed a new company called Neuralink. And his philosophy is not, and I'm not slighting him for this, because this is the way society learns, this is the way science learns, by pushing the boundaries. And Elon Musk is a brilliant man, he's pushing those boundaries. And I think he'll push them until he has pushback from society. Neuralink is the first chip implanted into the human brain that directly links the human brain with a hard drive of a physical computer without a wire, without a cable. So it's like Bluetooth technology. It's beyond Bluetooth, but you can think of it that way. Right. So what he's saying is, if you can't beat the machines, join them. He said, let's interface, let's become one with these machines. Right. So
what do you think about that?
So they have the chips, that can be implanted into the brain. And I mean, think about what's happening. These are silicon chips that have contact points that are interfacing with human neurons. My personal feeling is it's a mistake. My personal feeling. I believe it's a dangerous path, and I also believe it's an unnecessary path because we have the biology that allows us to do already. We have this, what those chips are allowing us to do if we awaken that biology. The Matrix is the perfect example of this. In the movie The Matrix, the people who were awakening into the new reality, when they needed to learn something quickly, they had a port at the base of their skull, and they would physically plug a cable into a computer, a hard drive, and they could download and learn programs very quickly. We have the ability to do right now through what are called mirror neurons. Interestingly, mirror neurons are a specialized class of neurons in the human brain that don't know the difference between watching an experience and having the experience. So when we already know this, for example, this is why you can lie on your couch on a Sunday afternoon watching a soccer game or a golf tournament or whatever. You're lying down, but you're watching this and your heart's racing, your muscles are tense, you might be perspiring, you might be, breathing heavy, but you're just lying there. I mean, if you think about that, it makes no sense. Your mirror neurons think you're the one on the field.
Right, which is why we watch.
It is. And these are very powerful neurons, and they're also powerful in addiction. This is why pornography, for example, is so powerful. It's so addicting because when someone witnesses those images with the mirror neurons, it triggers the oxytocin and the same dopamine, the same very addictive chemistry, because the brain doesn't know the difference between watching and having the experience. So these are the bad things that we hear. The good things that we don't often hear is because the brain doesn't know the difference. When we learn to access these mirror neurons in a very specific way, we have super learning, Brian. We can learn. So I do this personally. I mean, we can learn very, very quickly. We can learn music. You can learn to perform the way another musician is performing. You can learn a foreign language very quickly. You can not only retain, but recall information. Very super learning, super memory, super retention, super recall from the mirror neurons. And here's the kicker. Those mirror neurons in the human brain are in the 6th layer of the neurocortex that is made possible through a mysterious DNA fusion that happened 200,000 years ago. When we showed up, who or whatever is responsible for our existence, whatever's the source of the intervention that appears to have happened, made those neurons possible. And it gives us the ability, if we choose to access this potential, to learn and experience very, very quickly. We don't need to be physically connected to a computer. But this is an example of where, if we don't know that, and we go down this road, I mean, it won't stop there. We end up giving our power away to a device. And you've heard the old axiom, if use it or lose it. And we run, I think, the risk of becoming a species where we begin to lose this tremendous, beautiful potential.
And we are losing parts of that already because we're no longer kind of learning the same way and pushing our brains to learn languages. It's all there on Google Translate.
Ask the young people today to solve a mathematic problem without the use of a phone or a calculator. Now, I come from a generation, and this has all happened in one generation. When I was in school back in the 1950s, 60s, early 70s, engineers were putting the first man on the moon using a slide rule. Now, some of our viewers don't even know what a slide rule is, but it is the precursor it has no electricity. It is a gadget that looked like a ruler that had a slide that you could use to move and correlate certain numbers. And this is the way engineering happened in World War II, the atomic bomb. This is how we solved our problems. And young people now, if they don't have either a calculator, which is almost obsolete, the physical calculator. They're all on the phones now, or they don't have a phone. They cannot solve the problems.
Yeah, well, we are now cyborgs, whether we want to admit it or not. Most people are anxious that they don't have the phone. They refer to it all the time. It's part of their consciousness. And so, as I've heard Elon talk about, he said the problem now, or maybe not the problem, maybe the good part, according to you, is bandwidth. Because we have our thumbs to get the information from our brain into this network, this internet platform. And so Elon is proposing that we jack up that bandwidth and get all of the download and interaction between us and this supercomputing, super interconnected network around the world, and then take ourselves to that next level. And so I think Elon is a proponent, or he's just saying it's going to happen, so let's make it happen.
Yeah, he's just saying, let's go with the flow. This is where it's going.
Right, and I see what you're saying, because if we do that, there's not many ways of going back. We already are doing that to a certain extent, aren't we?
Well, we are, and I have to be, for transparency, I'll just say that I probably am what you would call a purist. There's a part of me that so respects the intricacy of the human being, our existence. We are so mysterious, we are so complex. And every time scientists think they've got it nailed, it's all buttoned up, and they think they understand that they don't know what's really happening. Human brain states is a perfect example. We can talk about that in just a moment. I think until we fully understand who we are and our potential, it's a mistake.
Right, because we're closing off that door, we might not ever go back there.
We're giving it away. It's a mistake to lose that.
50 years from now, there'll be the science fiction movie of the people that stayed away from the tech and the people that went into the tech.
I think it's happening right now. That's exactly what you're seeing. And you know, some people go to extremes. I think the machines can be useful as tools. My caution is not to embrace them as a crutch, where we have to have them. Right. If a machine can tell me when I'm creating the conditions in my body to access this potential, then that machine is very useful. Once I understand that, I can toss the machine away. I don't need the gadget, because now I know who I am. If I feel like I need the machine to take me to this place every time, so I have a bad day or I'm a little stressed, and I say, oh, I got to hook up to my machine, you know, my PC, and run this app to tell me when I'm in the right brain state or whatever, the right heart state or whatever it is. And I think that's where we run the risk, and we have to be conscious. We have to be conscious and cautious as we do this. I'm tripping on a little bit because I wanted to go back. I'm not slighting Elon Musk. He is of a different generation than we are. He's an entrepreneur. He's done amazing things. He sees potential, and he says, let's explore this potential. And so he probably is accelerating the evolution, wherever that evolution is going to go. We have to make a choice now, where we didn't have to make it 5 years ago. Now we have to choose, are we going to follow this path? Now I have to tell you, Brian, audiences all over the world, when I share this story, and I've got a presentation that goes with it, and before I even share my opinion, I can see people in the audience, and when they see the picture of the chip, I say, here's the chip, here's what it does, and people are out there, they're shaking their heads. And then when I say, in my opinion, this is a dangerous thing to do, it's a slippery slope, I think we may not want to go here, people stand up and they applaud. Yeah. People, at least in the ilk that we're communicating with, believe that there is we're pushing a boundary, and it's a boundary they don't want to cross.
So I hope that people have watched the second clip. This shows another possibility, because we gave a few examples of your sexual orientation, an injury, augmentation, etc. This clip really talks about neurolinking, implanting, connecting brains to machines, wireless, improving your brain capacity, etc. But it also goes into the other direction and says, well, we already have this full potential.
Well, this is not another aspect. This is the same aspect Yuval Harari discussed about, only he was referring to it on the principle level. This one is showing the details. This one is putting the focus on this kind of technology and shows all the details, capabilities, hazards, and sometimes even advantages. When having such a move, always one should consider the gains and the losses. This is something what everybody should wait. What is the best? If you surrender yourself to such a system, then you're already not a human. You lost human integrity, because human integrity is not in the envelope. Human integrity is in the spirit, is in the psychology, is in the thoughts. If you surrender your thoughts to the machine, whether it is a neuronal links by whatever, I mean, Wi-Fi, 5G, whatever, or you surrender completely, even with your capabilities to learn, then you're not human anymore. You just became a tool, and you are welcomed into the toolbox of the cannibalizing technology.
Then we come to the ethical question. We see that it's possible. Within the near future, we could make cyborgs. The transhumanistic agenda is something that is already here. Your opinion, I think, is very clear, and I concur that when something is possible, it's not specifically desirable. Do you think we should allow the personal choice of humans to be augmented in such a way that they are directly part of machinery or part of computers? So now I'm not talking about the species, but I'm talking about the individual choice.
Interesting question. I haven't thought of it, but as I said, my guidelines are that humans should remain human, with all their advantages and disadvantages. If you want to improve something or to gain something, you can always use a tool. For instance, you mentioned before this, let's say, an implant that will allow a person, a quadriplegic person, to walk and use his hands. This is fine, but when still it's his autonomy preserved. But when you become part of a network, I can't think of it that somebody will, not always with good intentions, will use this network for his needs. You know what? Sometimes pervert needs. Imagine yourself, some sexual perversion, only they are not satisfied with the doll synthetic. They want to have it biological. So they actually transform a person which should have been independent and autonomous into a controlled sex slave. And this person has no way to fight back because he's absolutely completed. I know, and this is one thing you should consider, for instance, as opposed to learning abilities. So I don't have to remember all the Mendeleev periodic chart table. It's not important. It is fine, it is there. I can find it on net. But it is important that I think. And there was a philosopher that said, I think, that means I exist. If the machine does the thinking, you don't exist. The machine exists. But one, as a person, doesn't exist. Okay?
Yes, we come to very fundamental questions about humanity, what defines us, what drives us. I'm afraid that we and other people need to have this discussion many times more, and that everybody has not only the possibility, but I would say the obligation or the what humanity is, and specifically for themselves, what their purpose is and what their core is. And without that development, without that self-work, all these questions about technology becomes rather meaningless.
It is not only meaningless, it is destructive, because you see, it has been disrupted the social meshwork. It has been disrupting the family meshwork, and it has created alienation in between individuals when we are all supposed to be a community society, a community-based society. And we have a lot of things to exchange, a lot of thoughts and ideas. And I would, you know, I would refer to the humankind as a garden. You may have flowers, you may have trees, you may have weeds, not everything, but it's all God's garden. And you have to see, like in college, there's no black and white. And let me tell you something, in physics, in between black and white, there's no gray. There are so many colors in between. We just have to learn to see them. Because as it is said in Jeremiah, chapter 5, verse 21, for they have eyes, but they will not see. They have ears, they will not hear. Because they are, let me see it exactly. Again, hear this, you foolish and senseless people, who have eyes but do not see, who have ears but do not hear. I had to have it. I always remember this. This is something we should open our eyes. We should open our ears. We should open our heart. We should use the main and most important tool we have is our soul. Our soul, not the machine, and not the computer, not the bloody mobile, which is a tool, a great tool. But hey, I am to master it, not that the mobile should master me. This is what I think.
Those are some great words. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you, Willem, for having me.